The Amityville Horror is a 1979 American supernatural horror film directed by Stuart Rosenberg and starring James Brolin and Margot Kidder as a young couple who purchase a home haunted by a combative supernatural force. The film is based on Jay Anson's 1977 book of the same name. The story is based on allegedly true experiences of the Lutz family who bought the home in Amityville, New York, where a mass murder had been committed the year before. Both the film and the book led to controversy and lawsuits over its truthfulness. So what is the true story of the Amityville Horror? Join us today on Monsters and Myths and let's find out the truth. On November 13th, 1974, Ronald Defeo Jr. shot and killed 6 members of his family at 112 Ocean Avenue, a large Dutch colonial house situated in the suburban neighborhood in Amityville, on the south shore of Long Island, New York. He was convicted of second-degree murder in November 1975. In December 1975, George and Kathy Lutz and their 3 children moved into the house. After 28 days, the Lutzes left the house, claiming to have been terrorized by paranormal phenomena while living there. The most well-known controversy is that of the haunting, the Lutz story. However, there is also mystery and controversy surrounding the Defeo killings. So let's examine both aspects of this case separately and bring them together to form a conclusive whole, starting with the Defeo murders. Ronald Joseph Butch Defeo Jr., born September 26, 1951, is an American mass murderer who was tried and convicted for the 1974 killings of his father, mother, 2 brothers, and 2 sisters. Around 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday, November 13, 1974, 23-year-old Defeo entered Henry's Bar in Amityville, New York, and declared, "You've got to help me. I think my mother and father are shot." Defeo and a small group of people went to 112 Ocean Avenue, which was located near the bar, and found that Defeo's parents were dead inside the house. One of the group made an emergency call to the police, who searched the house and found that 6 members of the same family were dead in their beds. All of the victims had been shot with a .35 caliber lever-action Marlin 336C rifle at around 3 o'clock in the morning of that day. The Defeo parents had both been shot twice, while the children had all been killed with single shots. Physical evidence suggests that Louise Defeo and her daughter Allison were both awake at the time of their deaths. All of the victims were found lying face down in bed. The 6 victims were later buried in the nearby St. Charles Cemetery in Farmingdale. As the last surviving family member, Butch was taken to the local police station for his own protection after he claimed to police officers that the killings had been carried out by a mob hitman. However, an interview at the station soon exposed serious inconsistencies in his version of events. The following day, he confessed to carrying out the killings himself. Defeo told detectives, "Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast." He admitted he had taken a bath and redressed, and detailed where he had discarded crucial evidence such as blood-stained clothes and the Marlin rifle and cartridges before going to work as usual. Defeo's trial began on October 14, 1975. His defense lawyer mounted a defense of insanity, with Defeo claiming he killed his family in self-defense because he heard voices plotting against him. The insanity plea was supported by his psychiatrist. However, Dr. Harold Zolan maintained that although Defeo was a user of heroin and LSD, he had antisocial personality disorder and was aware of his actions at the time of the crime. He was found guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder. Judge Thomas Stark sentenced Defeo to 6 concurrent sentences of 25 years to life. He is currently held at the Sullivan Correctional Facility in New York, and all of his appeals and requests to the parole board to date have been denied. There are outstanding controversies in this case. All 6 of the victims were found face down in their beds with no signs of a struggle. The police investigation concluded that the rifle had not been fitted with a sound suppressor and found evidence of sedatives having been administered. Defeo said he had drugged his family. Neighbours did not report hearing any gunshots, and those who were awake at the time of the murders only heard the family's sheepdog, Shaggy, barking. Defeo had a volatile relationship with his father, but his motive for the killings remains unclear. He asked police what he had to do in order to collect on his father's life insurance, which prompted the prosecution to suggest that his motive was to collect the life insurance policies of his parents. Since his conviction, Defeo has given several differing accounts of how the killings were carried out. In 1986, he claimed his sister Dawn killed their father, and then their distraught mother killed all of his siblings before he killed his mother. He stated he took the blame because he was afraid to say anything negative about his mother. In 1990, he claimed that Dawn, his sister, and an unknown assailant who fled the house before he could look at him, killed their parents, and Dawn subsequently killed their siblings. He said the only person he killed was Dawn, and that was by accident, as they struggled over the rifle. Judge Stark denied the motion, saying, "I find the testimony of the defendant overall to be false and fabricated. He produced no corroborating evidence in this regard. Another reason for my disbelief of defendant's testimony is demonstrated by consideration of several portions of the trial testimony. He signed a lengthy written statement describing in detail his activities." Defeo later changed his story again, claiming that he had committed the murders with his sister Dawn and 2 friends, out of desperation, because his parents had plotted to kill him. Joe Nickell notes that given the frequency with which Ronald Defeo has changed his story over the years, any new claims from him regarding the events that took place on the night of the murders should be approached with caution. "13 months after the Defeo murders, December 1975, George and Kathleen Lutz bought the house for what was considered to be a bargain price of $80,000. They had 3 children from a previous marriage: Daniel, Christopher, and Melissa. During their first inspection of the house, the estate broker told them about the murders and asked if this would affect their decision. After discussing the matter, they decided it was not a problem. The Lutz family moved in December 19, 1975. Most of the Defeo family furniture was still in the house because it was included for $400 as part of the deal. A friend of George Lutz learned about the history of the house and insisted on having it blessed. George knew a Catholic priest named Father Ray who agreed to carry out the house blessing. On the afternoon of December 18, 1975, he went into the building to carry out the rites. When he flicked the first holy water and began to pray, he heard a masculine voice demanding that he get out. When leaving the house, Father Mancuso did not mention this to either George or Kathy. On December 24th, Christmas Eve 1975, Father Mancuso called George and advised him to stay out of the second-floor room where he had heard the voice, the former bedroom of the Defeo children. Following his visit to the house, Father Mancuso developed a high fever and blisters on his hands, similar to stigmata. One of the children developed an imaginary friend named Jody. Jody would show itself to Missy as either an angel or a pig with red demonic eyes. By mid-January 1976, after another attempt at a house blessing, the Lutzes experienced what would turn out to be their final night in the house. The Lutzes describe greenish black slime coming up the staircase towards them. They left the house with their dog, leaving all their possessions behind. The next day, a mover arrived to remove the possessions to send to the Lutzes. He reported no paranormal phenomena whilst in the house. The subsequent book went on to sell over 10 million copies and generated a whole slew of horror films devoted to the Amityville house and the horrors suffered there. Jim and Barbara Cromartie, who bought the house for $55,000 in 1977, disputed many of the claims made in the Amityville Horror book. The claim that the house was built on an Indian burial site was rejected by local Native American leaders. The infamous Red Room was in fact just a small closet in the basement and would have been known to the previous owners of the house because it was not concealed in any way. The Cromarties and subsequent owners of the property experienced no paranormal activities of any kind. In the September 17, 1979 issue of People magazine, William Weber wrote, "I know this book is a hoax. We created this horror story over many bottles of wine." This refers to a meeting that Weber is said to have had with George and Kathy Lutz, during which they discussed what would later become the outline of the Amityville Horror book. George Lutz maintained that the events in the book were mostly true, and denied any suggestion of dishonesty on his part. In June 1979, George and Kathy Lutz took a polygraph test relating to their experiences in the house. The polygraphs were undertaken by the top 5 polygraph experts in America. The results did not indicate lying. 25 years later, George Lutz still maintained the validity of his account, saying, "I believe this has stayed alive for 25 years because it's a true story. It doesn't mean that everything that has ever been said about it is true. It's certainly not a hoax. It's real easy to call something a hoax. I wish it was. It's not." The house, once known as 112 Ocean Avenue, still exists, but it has been renovated and the address changed in order to discourage sightseers from visiting it. The famous quarter-round windows have been removed, and the house today looks considerably different from its depiction in the films. The local residents and authorities in Amityville, New York, are unhappy with the attention that the Amityville Horror brings to the town, and tend to decline requests to discuss it publicly. In May 2010, the house was placed on the market with an asking price of $1.15 million. In August 2010, the house was sold to a local resident for $950,000. The departing owner held a moving sale at the house, and hundreds of people turned up for the event. They were allowed to go inside the house, but not to visit the upstairs rooms or the basement. As we've discussed in the facts relating to this case, there was a true horror that occurred at the Amityville house. The murder of the Defeo family was a shocking and terrible event that sent ripples throughout the quiet and peaceful community of Amityville, New York. Was what the Lutz family experienced real? Was there some demonic presence in the house? Was the whole thing a hoax, simply to make money from publishing a book on the matter? Let me know your thoughts. Let's discuss these issues below. I hope you enjoyed the documentary. Have a good evening and take it easy.